Nessa temporada do Expresso Futuro, eu vim em África visitar um continente que está sendo totalmente transformado pela conectividade. Vim mostrar inovação tecnológica e economia do conhecimento. E aí você vai perguntar, mas em África? Sim, esse é um continente cheio de vitalidade, juventude e que tem descoberto soluções extraordinárias e que funcionam inclusive de lição para o Brasil. Tem muito projeto legal e interessante que olha para o futuro aqui. E é isso que a gente vai ver nessa temporada do Expresso Futuro. Nairobi é uma cidade fundada em 1899, na época para funcionar como um entreposto comercial de materiais muito básicos, como por exemplo o sisal. Só que nas últimas décadas, essa capital do Quênia está se transformando completamente, não só do ponto de vista urbanístico, a cidade se modernizando, grandes prédios, viadutos, mas também do ponto de vista da inovação. Aqui é a sede do Silicon Savana, a Savana do Silício, que é um hub gigantesco de startups, empreendedores e empreendedoras jovens que estão participando da economia do conhecimento e transformando a forma como a gente deve pensar, não só no país, o Quênia, mas também de todo o continente. É muita coisa legal que a gente vai ver aqui nesse episódio do Expresso Futuro. Uma das características de lugares que são inovadores é o surgimento de incubadoras e lugares de trabalho coletivo. E é exatamente isso que está acontecendo aqui em Nairobi. Eu estou agora no iHub, uma das principais incubadoras e lugares de trabalho para as startups do Quênia.
So we are at iHub now in Nairobi. Essentially what iHub is we are an entrepreneur support organization. We do that by offering them co-working space, supporting them through our incubator accelerator activities, and then organizing community initiatives that are designed to bring people together to just collect kosher and have like some peer-to-peer learning.
Do you know what type of startups we can find here, like some examples?
Mostly in around, again, fintech, because of the fact that a lot of these are still unbanked. The second trend would be startups that are focused on logistics, so last mile delivery, given the fact that here in Kenya and many parts of Africa, we do not have like a very unified address system. So like when people order goods online, getting it to that like doorstep is a bit challenging because we don't have a detailed roadmap of the different urban areas. And then the third other trend is regarding healthcare innovations. So again, because healthcare is essential and a lot of people don't have access to adequate healthcare, a lot of innovators actually flock into that space. One good example that touches on even artificial intelligence is one startup by the name of Neural Labs. And what they're doing is using machine learning and neural sight to actually scan X-rays to actually determine if a patient has respiratory problems or a breast disease. So yes, those are the three key areas: fintech, logistics, and also healthcare.
That's amazing. We are coming from Brazil, and it's so interesting to see because the problems are the same. Yeah. So maybe we can learn from you guys.
Hopefully. Yeah.
É interessante que mais de 450 startups têm raízes aqui no iHub. Is it easy to get developers in Kenya?
We do have like a vibrant developer space. However, the developer market is, a bit fragmented. However, hubs like iHub, hubs like other co-working spaces do a huge job to actually providing a space where these guys can actually form a community.
Do you see that, for instance, is there governmental support for innovation, for technology? How is it working now?
Yes, we do have some government support, but not as much as we had initially intended. For example, a lot of the funding that actually goes into the startup ecosystem here in Kenya comes from foreigners, and that might be great and all. However, foreigners have their own priorities, their own goals that they're trying to push, and those priorities might not necessarily align with the innovators. So if we had enough government support, that would actually be a bit better, because again it would actually be funding local solutions by local innovators rather than having like this over-reliance on foreign donors who can actually decide to shift their attention to other markets or other sectors that might not be necessarily relevant to our market. Hopefully, in the next couple of years, we might see our first unicorn coming out of East Africa, hopefully Kenya, fingers crossed.
Yes.
But that's kind of like how an overarching view of the Silicon Savannah.
A gente está bem no centro de Nairobi, capital do Quênia. E como dá para ver, é uma cidade super urbana, e chama muita atenção a construção de infraestruturas novas. Então tem muito viaduto, parques, uma renovação urbana que está acontecendo a olhos vistos. Isso é interessante porque significa investimento, inclusive investimento chinês aqui no país. E além disso, dá para ver que o país também está avançando por conta da democracia, eleições livres, troca de poder e coisas que são muito importantes para o continente africano. E óbvio, com infraestrutura, conectividade, você também traz empreendedorismo e inovação.
So Ushahidi is a global tech non-profit organization. We've been around for about 14 years. The company's name comes from a Swahili word that means testimony, which speaks to our origins, because the organization was founded right after the post-election violence that broke out in Kenya in 2007.
Yes.
And many of us were stuck in our houses not knowing what was going on. And there was a bit of a media ban as well. So the Ushahidi founders set up this web platform that made it easy for an ordinary citizen to just send in a text, send in an email or a tweet, or fill out a web form and have that information aggregated and visualized on a map. We see ourselves as an organization that exists to empower ordinary citizens to solve problems in the communities through access to data and tech.
Yeah.
And we do that through building our open source technology platforms that make it very easy for them to collect massive amounts of data from underrepresented groups around different issues. It could be crisis-related issues, human rights protection issues, or even good governance, and then use that to advocate for the change that they want to see, lead to decision-making that's representative of their needs.
I remember when Ushahidi was created that it was really a blast in terms of innovation.
It really was, because when you think back to that time when Ushahidi was popping up, it's the advent of social media and all of these platforms for self-expression. This idea of having information flowing from the bottom up was really kind of exciting and new. And here we were capitalizing on that, but then also making use of technology that people have access to. Something as simple as a mobile phone, and making that very easy for people to then kind of see that voice being raised and then using that for good.
So what are the features of Ushahidi right now, like practical examples of how you use the platform?
Practical examples of how we use them. It's largely been used around the crisis response space. Older examples would include the Haiti earthquake in 2011. There was the Japan earthquake.
Yes.
But most recently, actually the COVID-19 pandemic. For human rights protection, there was Harassment. They were using it to document cases cases of women being sexually harassed in the streets of Egypt, and they inspired about 21 other different maps, using that as a way of trying to create awareness about some of the atrocities that are going on, so that you move the conversation from is it happening into what do we then do about it. And most recently it was used during the Black Lives Matter protests in the US, in Portland, and even for the NSARS ones in Nigeria.
Wow, incredible. And you were very inspirational for Brazilian initiatives as well, like Meu Rio, Nossas. I'm not sure if you heard of them, but they pretty much got your template to do it in Brazil.
Absolutely. I think it's that idea of really lowering the barriers for people to interact with the tech. So that aspect of being able to collect data from different streams just helps to really diversify and ensure that you can reach as many people as possible.
You have been a pioneer in innovation, right, in Kenya. Do you think that spark has caught fire somehow?
I think that spark, there's already a fire.
Yeah.
Because if you look back at
good.
the early days when Ushahidi started, we had a small community here at the iHub. Now there's so many innovation hubs that are even under an umbrella body called AfriLabs. There's a host of startups. I think we've even gotten to the point where some of the conversations we're having isn't about our capacity to solve problems with tech, but really into how we're getting access to the right kind of funding so that we're able to scale the project. So Nairobi is definitely buzzing when it comes to innovation.
How do you see yourself in Kenya in terms of innovation in the next 10 years, 10 years from now?
Things are always changing. I mean, right now everybody's talking about the fourth industrial revolution. There's a lot of conversations around automation and machine learning and how to make it much easier. And I know that for us, that's actually been a really big consideration. We still have big challenges around natural disasters, especially in this time when climate change is one of the most pressing issues in our world. And the growing realization that solving problems in our world will take collaboration and interacting with the people who are directly affected. I can see how we'll still always be there. It's just a matter of the how, the things that we do to make that much easier, the things we do or the things we build that will make it easier for some of these groups to access based on their challenges. And that's why we're still very much in touch with our communities. We are very proactive about iterating around the features that we're building with our audiences in mind.
Uma história de inovação que eu adoro aqui no continente é o surgimento do celular Tecno. Essa é uma marca que não é muito conhecida dos brasileiros, mas se tornou hoje mais vendida que as principais marcas globais que você conhece de celular aqui no continente. E sabe por quê? Porque ele foi desenhado e projetado pensando na realidade local. A câmera do Tecno foi desenhada para tirar foto boa de pessoa que tem a pele negra. E com isso, fez toda a diferença, porque muitos celulares no Ocidente são desenhados para tirar foto de pessoas brancas. E quando esse celular chegou no mercado, virou um hit, um sucesso absoluto e ultrapassou as marcas globais.
So this is a Technophone,
Yeah,
which is easily accessible to the middleman here in Kenya.
yeah.
It goes for about $150. I love it because it takes good photos and it's easily available for us.
Not too expensive.
And not too expensive.
Yeah, and it's a brand that exists in all Africa, right?
It's an international brand,
Yeah.
but it is quite common here in Africa,
Yeah.
yes.
One thing that I heard is that it takes pictures of dark skin much better than other phones,
It
right?
has better, I can say it has better photos than an iPhone.
That's very good. That's very good. We should take one to
Yes,
see
we
that.
should.
Yeah, yeah.
We should,
Let's do it. Belo exemplo de inovação e empreendedorismo de conhecimento com base no contexto local. A inovação não está concentrada em um lugar só, ela se espalha pelo continente, inclusive em Moçambique e com relação à cerveja. Bruno, explica pra gente, onde é que a gente está agora?
Olha, agora nós estamos em Moçambique, na província de Maputo, e esta é a fábrica mais recente da cerveja de Moçambique. Vocês estão a ver tanques para armazenamento de cereais que vão desde o arroz, o milho, a mandioca, farinha e outros cereais que a gente possa usar como condimento para fabricar a cerveja.
Você falou uma coisa interessante, mandioca, quer dizer que tem cerveja de mandioca?
Exato, temos uma cerveja de mandioca e a nossa empresa foi a pioneira a nível mundial em produzir uma cerveja à base de mandioca. Isto foi em 2011, em que nós construímos uma fábrica nova na província de Nampula, que por sinal é das províncias mais pobres de Moçambique. Sim. E a cultura da mandioca também é muito comum lá. Sim. Todos os agricultores familiares, todas as famílias, é comum no seu espaço ter mandioca plantada. E eles usam isso como uma forte base da sua alimentação. Então nós criamos uma cultura para produzir a cerveja que não fosse o malte, que é importado das Europa e dos climas frios, mas a mandioca de um clima tropical, que as pessoas pudessem fornecer, vender para a cervejeira, de modo a nós podermos produzir uma cerveja.
Interessante que a mandioca ela é cultivada por pequenos produtores, né? O milho, o trigo, geralmente são produtores muito grandes. Isso ajuda, então, esse pequeno produtor?
Está ajudando, sim, porque a CDM privilegia estar a trabalhar com pequenos agricultores para este tipo de culturas locais. E este foi um compromisso que nós fizemos, envolvendo o governo, para promover variáveis, porque há muitas variedades de mandiocas, amargas, claras. Então nós criamos uma variedade que não fosse concorrente das variedades que as pessoas usam para alimentação, que fosse boa para a cerveja e que ainda desse renda para as pessoas. Portanto, trabalhamos em conjunto e essas pessoas realmente colhem a mandioca e vendem para a cerveja de Moçambique. Nós temos processadores que também trabalham conosco e cada vez mais nós estamos a trabalhar para puxar o máximo da cadeia de valor para o produtor. A mandioca não estava em nenhuma cadeia de valor industrial.
Sim.
Era um produto de subsistência. As pessoas cultivavam, vendiam para os vizinhos e o outro, secavam, comiam, mas não estava integrada numa cadeia de indústria.
Quer dizer que não é só uma inovação na forma de fazer cerveja, né? É também uma inovação social.
É sim, e devo dizer que em 2013 esta iniciativa ganhou um prêmio global, que é a Dream Tech na Alemanha, de maior iniciativa de responsabilidade social. E ganhou ainda o prêmio a nível da África, que foi de melhor negócio filantrópico que foi feito, que foi dessa cerveja de mandioca. Temos orgulho de dizer que a primeira cerveja de mandioca foi feita em Moçambique, na província de Nampula, pela cerveja de Moçambique.
E para terminar, a pergunta mais importante, a cerveja é boa?
É fantástica. Convido a provar.
Pois é, pessoal, cerveja de mandioca. Ó, Impala, cerveja de mandioca, criada em Moçambique, uma ideia legitimamente moçambicana, feita com ingrediente que é, na verdade, das Américas, né, inclusive do Brasil, trazido para cá e transformado em cerveja, uma coisa pioneira. Agora, vamos para o teste. Ó, não tem diferença da cerveja feita com o trigo. Vamos ver. Excelente. Moçambique tá de parabéns. Tem uma coisa que chama muita atenção aqui em Nairobi e também em outros países que a gente está visitando, que é a quantidade de marcas chinesas e indianas que a gente vê pelas ruas. É interessante porque o continente hoje africano, ele virou um território de competição muito grande entre a China e a Índia para ver quem faz mais negócios. O Brasil costumava participar dessa disputa, mas nos últimos anos perdeu um terreno enorme para esses dois outros países que querem fazer projetos de investimento, comércio e também de desenvolvimento no continente africano. Isso é uma pena, porque definitivamente aqui é um território de desenvolvimento, de investimentos e de muitas possibilidades, inclusive de inovação.
I think there needs to be a lot more integration between Brazil and Africa. A huge portion of your population is African, of African origin. So I think that there's a natural, connection there. Mozambique and Angola both speak Portuguese. And I think there's a need for that connection to happen, but there's an opportunity for trade and investment that to happen both ways. But it first starts by understanding each other. Things like this are helpful for people to understand whether there's a true picture in Africa. And Africans need to understand as well what is going on in Brazil. And then we need travel, right? Brazilians need to come to Africa, Africans need to come to Brazil. And then once you have those relationships amongst the people, and then the governments as well need to come together, then I think we can really start to learn from each other and to support each other in our development. Because many times innovations that are and conditions in the West are very different from conditions in developing economies like in Africa or in Brazil. So we can learn from each other, and there's some solutions that we have in Africa that can work in Brazil, and some solutions that work in Brazil that can work in Africa.
O Fred Swaneker está pensando na questão da sustentabilidade e da construção de novos líderes no continente africano. Este é um continente muito jovem. A média de idade aqui hoje é 18 anos. E ele está pensando no futuro para mudar completamente o panorama de inovação aqui.
I'm a Ghanaian. I was born in Ghana when I was 4, and then left there when I was 4, and moved to Gambia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Mauritius. And these days I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. So as a result of all this travel, I developed an identity as an African, not just as a Ghanaian. And I fell in love with the continent of Africa. The more I traveled, the more I saw that the real wealth that we have in Africa is not our gold or our diamonds or our minerals, but it's really our people. There's a burgeoning startup ecosystem in Africa, right, where there are a lot of young people who are learning the latest technologies and coming up with new ventures. And the best way to develop Africa would be to develop our people. Africa has a branding problem. Most people, when they think of Africa, they think of famine and warfare and, starving children and things like that. And they can't see it as a continent that is innovative. In fact, many people don't know, but Amazon Web Services was first developed in South Africa, right? And today, the entire cloud infrastructure that the world has would not have happened if it wasn't for those South African software engineers that were started in Africa. But no one knows that. The first heart transplant in the world was done in South Africa. So there's a lot of innovation that has happened, but it's not communicated. So the branding of Africa needs to change. We need to control the narrative better, and different stories need to be told. In terms of the potential for the knowledge economy, Africa, by the end of the century, is going to be 40% of the world's population. And by 2035, our workforce will be larger than China and India. And Africa also has the youngest population in the world. That means that the talent that we have in Africa that can develop innovative solutions in this fourth industrial revolution is massive. There's a huge potential for that. Young people are much more open to new technologies. One of the things I really believe is that constraints drives innovation, and Africa has a lot of constraints. So we have to reimagine and rethink everything.
Todo mundo sabe que hoje está faltando programador no Brasil. É uma dificuldade de contratar e isso atrasa o desenvolvimento das empresas brasileiras. O que pouca gente sabe é que tem muita gente contratando serviços de programação no continente africano. Tem muita empresa hoje que oferece programadores, inclusive em Moçambique, para fazer trabalhos no Brasil remotamente. Essa é uma amostra de como o continente africano está avançando também na economia do conhecimento.
The digital transformation has been accelerated because of the COVID pandemic. So as a result, every business overnight is a technology business. So there's a huge need for skills. And globally, there's an estimate that the world will need 50 to 85 million people in technology jobs in the next 10 years. So what is happening is that the rest of the world have realized that the only place they can find this talent is in Africa. So you're starting to see a lot of global technology companies setting up operations in Africa. So Google opened a center in Kenya to do software development. They opened an AI center in Ghana. Amazon Web Services is starting to do a lot of exciting things on the continent. What's also happening is infrastructure in Africa is developing, and therefore people can work remotely from Africa to the rest of the world. Another trend is the COVID pandemic. It suddenly made companies a lot more open to realizing that they can hire talents from anywhere in the world. So 40% of Africa's software engineers today work outside of Africa remotely. They sit in their country and they're working for companies in the US and Europe and Latin America and so forth. The global technology companies are seeing that Africa is the next frontier for technology talent.
Nairobi é uma cidade surpreendente. Além de ser uma cidade totalmente urbanizada, inclusive com problema de trânsito intenso, tem também a sua Savana do Silício, o lugar onde empresas de tecnologia, muitas delas especializadas em serviços financeiros, estão construindo soluções para o futuro. Ou seja, o continente africano ainda vai dar muito o que falar, construindo inovações e soluções nos próximos anos e décadas para problemas globais.